So I want to discuss something that I feel is maybe missing in a lot of discourse that I see, or at least like I don't come across it very often because it's easy to ignore. And this really helps for me to put things into perspective in why the world is the way that it is. And it kind of gets rid of a lot of the guesswork or the illusions of reality around us, and things start to make more sense. And it is a bleak awareness, so to speak, but I promise that I will hopefully end this video off on a positive note in terms of what can be done and how you channel that awareness is so important. But I'm just going to get straight into it. The majority of the world, like the modern day world, especially if you live in a first world country or advanced countries, quote unquote, is built on oppression. It's built on slavery, violence, bloodshed, exploitation. Not only in our modern world right now, when it comes to like how much of the profits are shared amongst the people who are actually putting in the labor, right? It's like literally a fraction, like a penny compared to how much the people who own the chain, like the supply chain, right? And so not only is it like that modern day form of like slavery and exploitation, but historically, of course, if you want to talk about like America, since I live in the United States, easy example, but America's roots are literally like displacing, harming, and just absolutely completely colonizing a people and like segregating and like pushing them out and like constricting them, trying to force them to assimilate to their way of life. And with that came a ton of violence and harm and assault and everything in between. And for the sake of not getting censored, I don't care about this video being monetized whatsoever, but I hopefully wanted to reach as many people as possible. So I may, when I speak, I'm actually downplaying what happened. But if I use like legitimate language, it's horrifying. It's like the worst thing ever. And that's colonization. If you want to talk about slavery, if you want to talk about like modern day surveillance and all of these things, there is a reason why the world is the way that it is. And people don't just talk about like race and marginalization and history just for the heck of it. It is spoken about so much because it has had such a profound impact in the course of our society and why we find ourselves in the position that we are in today. And unless you understand that, you will not understand why our societal ills exist, right? And they exist because of all of this history. This history builds up, and it not only affects you like your physiology, but your psychology, your spirituality. And it's so unfortunate because like, let's use the Black community as an example, the African American community in the United States, right? They are often pointed, like a lot of discourse, and especially people who are like more conservative or push out these talking points are like, look, they are in the position they are, and this is because of their culture, right? Their culture of like violence, their culture of like valuing things like sports, or I don't know, like you hear all sorts of things, but like their culture of not working hard, their culture of substance abuse, drug abuse, right? And people will point to these things. And first of all, I want to say like no community of people is a monolith. So there's like no way you can paint this broad stroke and be like, oh yeah, like everyone across here is different, right? It's all anecdotal and circumstantial, but they point to like these higher rates of like crime and violence and whatever it may be, but it is completely missing the forest for the trees. Because in the modern day, you can look at a community like this and cast judgment or cast aspersion, but any group of people who have been put through what the African American community have been put through throughout the course of history in the United States would deal with the same struggles and same issues. Anyone who has been subjected to such horrifying conditions and literally like forced down to the lowest, not even like the lowest, but like the subhuman bottom rung of the totem pole for so long, right? That will have implications and impacts for how you are able to live your life, how successful you are able to be, because everything was quite literally rigged against you from the start. So not only like your financial status, but like your social standing, what you turn to cope, right, are oftentimes substances. And guess what? What they turned to cope was leveraged against them with the war on drugs. And these like drugs were disseminated into their communities, and so like they became even more addicted and dependent. And it's a reinforcing feedback loop that keeps people down and marginalized, and it's all for the gain of some people and at the expense of others, right? And anyone who has gone through that would have been in the same position. And so it's almost like enraging. Like I'm angry on behalf of them, but also I relate in my own way, right? Which I can get into later. But staying on this example, like people, and I mean, you have to be honest, like the makeup of the demographics is like the majority of people who have colonized and been in power for so long are white people, right? So like race in and of itself, I wish we lived in a world where like it was not as acute, or we had to be aware of it all the time, just like how children are not very much aware of race. They are more nowadays, but the reality is that it has shaped so much, right? Because on the basis of race, so much of this has happened. I lost my train of thought a little bit. Let's see. Oh yeah, okay, so it enrages me because these same people who are in power will point at the bottom and be like, yeah, like you guys are the way you are because of this, but they have been the very ones to create the same conditions. It's manipulation, and it's a form of like dismissal and gaslighting that is just so lame. Like anytime I see it, I just, it's so transparent at this point, where there's a sense of like entitlement, as if like the world is there, or your like birthright, or you are where you are because of like your own merits, when you are not like born on third base, you know what I mean? And this is not just for like nepo babies. This is like if you have been fortunate enough to exist in a bubble where your whole life has not been or your whole family lineage and history has not been pure like oppression and displacement and everything between, and you as a modern day descendant of that are suffering the consequences of it. And so like they will paint like black culture in this way. They will paint Native Americans as like lazy or don't want to work or have alcohol issues or whatever. And like, yeah, in a vacuum, you can look at that and be like, okay, like it means nothing. It means nothing to look at it in a vacuum through the modern day without any historical perspective. And so how I relate to this is like, you know, a lot of like the propaganda and mass surveillance and fear that spread about brown people, right? Like, especially like Middle Eastern people or South Asian people, about how like terrorism and all of these things, like they're dangerous and all that. And then like you can just tell how things shifted in a way where like as it was happening, I was like growing up, right? I was, when 9/11 happened, I was very, very young. I was like 2 years old. But like growing up, I could see and feel the experience of it. But like it's so hard to articulate why certain people act the way that they did or do. And it's kind of cooled off a little bit, but like then it ramps up here and there. But my point is like that in and of itself, when it comes to being marginalized or being oppressed, if you have not lived an experience of feeling it, there's different, it's a spectrum, right? There's varying levels to it. It's not a competition, but like some people have felt it more acutely. Like I live in the first world in the United States, and I'm fortunate enough to have like shelter and things and a family who is supportive, and like ultimately like I'm in a fortunate position. But like the people who haven't been in as fortunate of a position, it's hard to empathize, right? Because like empathy comes from having that experience yourself. I just wrote a post on Substack about chronic illness and how like it's very hard to empathize with someone who has chronic illness unless you've experienced chronic illness for yourself. But I think at the minimum, what we can do as a society is have some sort of sympathy, and like a strong sympathy for people, where it's like, okay, I may not have experienced exactly what you're experiencing or have experienced, but I have sympathy for it because I can understand, at least conceptually, and just based on like knowledge and awareness, that what you have gone through, what your people have gone through is horrible. And right now, as a society, we are lacking sympathy, but we are deeply, deeply lacking empathy. And you can see, like, when you don't have a society that has empathy or sympathy, on the big picture level, there is very little. I saw a comment earlier about someone on Reddit discussing like how there's very little stability without a society that lacks empathy and sympathy, because those things take um, they take awareness, they take experience, it takes sacrifice, right? It takes self-sacrifice, it takes generosity, it takes um, sacrificing a bit of your individuality for something beyond yourself, for something greater than yourself, to help people who have been in less fortunate positions. That's what empathy and sympathy take. And our society is very like, that is a scarce, if you want to talk about resources and markets and capitalism, that is a scarce resource in our society. And you don't get rewarded for that in this system, obviously. Maybe you get rewarded like internally and intrinsically, and like your relationships, and so you do get rewarded, but it's a different type of reward. You don't get like incentively rewarded to do these things nearly as much as you do to like trample on others and to harm others and exploit others on your way to the top. And so, in terms of what can be done, I just felt this message is something I wanted to share and felt compelled to share, because we are seeing a growing erosion of our rights, mass surveillance. They want you to like make the people who have been through the hardest struggles the enemy, so they can leverage like people against each other, when at the end of the day, like, all of this is not like a coincidence, right? This is a system that is reinforcing itself. It is history reinforcing itself, and it is baked into our systems, and they just like rinse and repeat. And the only way to stop it is to be aware of it and to break the cycle and to do something different, to sacrifice a little bit of your individuality to help someone in need. Because that sacrifice on the individual level, that sympathy, and if you've gone through something similar, you have some sort of empathy, right? Which is why marginalized people always need to support each other, because we can actually empathize with each other's experiences. That is what will bring about more big picture stability, big picture harmony, peace, and start to repair relations between people again. Because it's no mystery how fractured we are. We're so connected, right? But like, we're so fractured, we're so isolated, we're so lonely. And this is why, I think it's like this massive awareness and information hitting us at once, and us not really knowing how to channel it or what to do with it in our own individual lives. Because so much of our comforts and our luxuries in the first world are built upon someone else's struggle and suffering. And once you're aware of that, it's like hard. Like, I'm trying to figure out ways in my life where like, how do I reduce my reliance and dependence on like comforts? How do I shop more ethically? How do I be a little bit more minimalist while still enjoying the things I enjoy? How do I not take these things for granted, right? How do I not pretend like I am entitled to these things or I deserve these things, because that's not true at all. A lot of it was a roll of the dice, and my family was fortunate enough to move here and fortunate enough to be in a position to have access to these resources, where like, for every family that this happens to, there's like dozens and dozens of other families that don't have access to that. And that is something we need to not take for granted and be grateful for. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about this, because I think as a society, without this historical perspective, we will not be informed on how to move forward and how to have empathy for each other. And if you resonate with this, support the people who have gone through something similar in their own way, shape, or form. Because a lot of the stuff that is happening across the world, it's not very long, and it's already happening, right? Like, it's not very long till it comes home, till it comes back to the imperial core, so to speak. But like, all this mass surveillance, you see these AI cameras everywhere. We have barely any privacy. Our data is just being bought and sold everywhere. There's propaganda everywhere. AI is being used to do it. It's siphoning wealth from like the working class and distributing to AI, but that wealth only goes to the people at the top. Like, this is it's almost like a disease and a parasite within our system. And we put so much focus on like the exact people doing it. And yes, it is like a class of people who have completely opposite interests and are perpetuating these things, right? It's important to be aware of that, But I don't think so much of our focus should be like um, on like fighting them at their own game or at their own level, because that's what they do. But what we can do is build things from the ground up to try to work together to allow our efforts in tandem with each other, whether it's online or in real life, act as like an insulation, as like a shield of something good, of something positive. And the more we build that in our own lives individually, but then spread that to each other and cooperate with each other, those people, it's almost like they're like rats who are going to scurry, or like people who will not have the same leverage or power that they will have, and they will just like be biting their own tail, so to speak, like a snake does, you know? And we just got to let that happen and let them like fight amongst each other. But you have to be aware of it, right? Because they hold so much power over so many things and resources and whatnot. So like you have to be aware. But yeah. So my message to you is this, is like, try to practice sympathy, try to practice empathy, try to be generous in any way you can, even if it's the smallest of ways. That is a trek in the right direction. And for those of you who are more interested in these like things and aware of it, to teach others, use your voice. Don't underestimate it, right? Like it's easy to underestimate it when like a lot of people don't want you speaking about these sorts of things. They'd rather brush it under the rug and keep going and let the status quo be what it is and just drown this out, drown this out, drown this out. But you cannot drown out something that has so profoundly shaped every fabric of our societies across the world. And it's still happening today, this massive exploitation, this massive extraction of value. And so we need to be aware of it and call it out in the present moment as well, informed by the past, so we can move toward a future and a vision that we want, that is good for as many people as possible. So that's my message. And on a final note, completely unrelated and completely not serious, but what is a splash of coffee? I was just thinking about this earlier. I was making coffee and like, okay, I use like a few tablespoons of milk, right? But then like you go to a coffee shop and you're like, okay, I'll get a splash of this, but like a splash is not a standardized metric, dude. You know what I mean? Like we have teaspoons, we have tablespoons, we have cups, we have all these metrics, but suddenly like you're at a shop and you're like, a splash or 2 splashes, but like their definition of a splash could be completely different from yours. And splash is a pretty volatile word, you know what I mean? Like splash could just mean like, oh, a little splash, or it could be like boom, like you're going in a pool or something. So I don't know, like I feel like a splash needs to be standardized in some way, shape, or form, because you don't want to have too much, you don't want to have too little, and it's different based on different people's preferences. So like, yeah, what is that all about? Okay, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Is there anything else I want to say? I don't know, I'm just scared. You're seeing this like massive encroachment, and in the US it's becoming harder and harder to voice your dissent and to put yourself out there without like fear of being like targeted or watched or whatever. And there's just like this paranoia, I feel, and anxiety with a lot of this technology being used to oppress people and to subjugate others, and just seeing it slowly like work its way. Actually, it's rapid, but like the experience of it can feel slow sometimes, but working its way from like I don't like the country that starts with the P. Again, I just want this to reach people, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what's happening with like the massive surveillance and oppression that's happening there actively, and seeing that technology being leveraged and used in the States and in other countries. It just seems like this massive crunch on like power and just exploiting people and fracturing communities as much as possible. And I want to take that fear I feel and not play small, but to like take that and transmute it into something actionable, into something positive, into something strong, something courageous. So I implore you guys to do the same. And it is probably the biggest fight of our lifetimes. And we can do this on our own terms if we really work together. I really do think we can. And the onus is on people who are active, who have energy, who are aware. And that can be across all age groups, but especially those of us who are young, we have inherited a world, and I think it is our responsibility to try and make it better, to like fix the ills of our past. So yeah, anyways, that's it. Thank you for watching. And if you resonated with this, subscribe. I think I'm just going to be talking about random stuff on this channel, sometimes post some creative videos. But yeah, that's it for all, and I'm wishing you all peace and love. Bye.